She was just a waitress. No one noticed until a mysterious billionaire saw her kindness, and her life changed forever. She woke up before sunrise, the sound of her alarm cutting through the quiet of her tiny apartment. The walls were thin, the space small, but it was hers. She pulled herself out of bed, careful not to wake her roommate, and started her morning routine. The apartment smelled faintly of last night's dinner and the lingering scent of laundry detergent. She moved quickly, slipping into her worn uniform, tying her hair back neatly, and checking her reflection in the cracked mirror. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that today, like every other day, she had to give her best. The walk to work was long, and the city streets were already starting to hum with life. Cars honked in the distance, people hurried past with coffee cups in their hands, and the air carried the sharp temps of exhaust mixed with the aroma of fresh bread from the nearby bakery. She kept her head down, focusing on her pace, counting the minutes until she would reach the diner where she worked. Every day felt the same, but she didn't mind. Routine was comforting in a world that often felt unpredictable. Arriving at the diner, she pushed open the door and was greeted by the familiar smell of sizzling bacon and brewed coffee. The place was small, but it had charm, with checkered floors and neon signs that flickered softly. Her coworkers were already bustling about, refilling condiments, wiping tables, and calling out orders to the kitchen. She moved to the back, washed her hands, and pinned on her name tag. Then she took a moment to glance around, noticing the same regular faces, people who came in every day, who knew her name and who smiled when they saw her. It was comforting, but she sometimes felt invisible, like she was part of the background of everyone's lives. Orders began to come in. She moved quickly, taking each one with a practiced smile. She listened carefully to the customers, repeating their choices back to them, making small talk when she could. Some days were easy, filled with friendly chatter and laughter. Other days were harder, with impatient customers and long lines that tested her patience. But she never let her frustration show. She had learned early on that keeping calm and polite was her shield in this world. She remembered her mother's words, "Kindness is always noticed." Even if it takes time, her shift was long, and the diner was often crowded. She balanced plates in her hands, refilled drinks, and made sure every customer felt seen. Sometimes she wondered if anyone really noticed her effort. She thought about the small dreams she carried in her heart, dreams of stability, of being able to take care of herself without worry, of maybe one day having a life that wasn't just about surviving from paycheck to paycheck. She kept those dreams close, hidden behind her practiced smiles, because sharing them felt risky. Most people were too busy with their own lives to see hers. In between serving tables, she stole moments to breathe, leaning against the counter for a second, or sneaking a sip of water. Her feet ached, her back ached, but she pushed through. She had bills to pay, rent to cover, little luxuries she allowed herself, like a favorite chocolate bar or a book from the thrift store. Every small victory, like getting a compliment from a customer or seeing a satisfied smile after serving a meal, felt like proof that her effort mattered. She had coworkers who were friendly, but the diner also had its share of difficult personalities. There was a cook who yelled too much, a manager who sometimes seemed more interested in numbers than people, and a few customers who could be rude without a second thought. She had learned to navigate these challenges with grace, developing a quiet strength that came from years of handling more than her fair share of problems. Despite the hard days, she loved being part of this place. It felt like a small world where she could matter, even if only a little. Her personal life was quiet, filled with simple routines and small joys. She had friends, though few, who understood her world. They shared meals, laughter, and stories about dreams that felt just out of reach. She often stayed up late thinking about her future, scribbling ideas in a notebook, or watching videos about people who had made it against the odds. She clung to those stories, imagining that one day, maybe, something extraordinary could happen to her too. Her family lived in a different city, and calls were infrequent, but she cherished them. She worried about them constantly, wanting to help, to make life easier in any way she could. But distance and finances made it difficult. She learned to carry that love quietly, storing it in her heart and letting it motivate her rather than weigh her down. Every small act of kindness she offered to others felt like a way to spread a little of the warmth she wished she could send to her family. As the day wore on, the diner grew busier. The lunch rush brought a flood of customers, and she worked tirelessly, weaving through tables, balancing trays, and answering questions with patience. She noticed small details: a customer who seemed sad, a child who dropped a fork, a man who needed his coffee refilled without asking. These moments mattered to her, even if no one else noticed. She believed that attention to small things could make someone's day a little brighter, and she took pride in that. By mid-afternoon, fatigue began to set in, but she kept moving. There were moments when she felt the weight of her life pressing down: bills, responsibilities, the uncertainty of tomorrow, but she didn't stop. She reminded herself of why she kept going. Not just to survive, but because she hoped for something more. Every shift, every smile, every small act of care was a step toward a life she dreamed of, but had not yet reached. Evening came, and the diner began to empty. She wiped down tables, restocked supplies, and prepared for closing. Her feet throbbed, her arms ached, but she felt a quiet satisfaction. She had done her job well, as she always did. She counted the tips, small but steady, and tucked them into her pocket, thinking about how to stretch them until her next payday. When her shift ended, she walked home in the fading light, the city now quieting around her. She thought about the day, replaying moments in her head: the smiles she had seen, the laughter she had shared, the challenges she had faced. She felt tired but proud, carrying a sense of resilience that had been built through years of effort and endurance. Once home, she changed into comfortable clothes, poured a cup of tea, and sat by the window. The city lights twinkled, and she allowed herself a moment of peace. She thought about tomorrow, knowing it would be another long day, another test of patience and strength. But she also thought about the possibility, however faint, that life could change in ways she had never imagined. And she held on to that thought, a small flame of hope that kept her moving forward. Even when the world felt heavy and indifferent, she went to bed early, her body aching, but her mind alive with dreams. She imagined a life beyond the diner, beyond the routine. A life where her effort and kindness could be recognized in ways she had only hoped for. She fell asleep thinking that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow could bring something extraordinary, something that could change everything. Her life was ordinary in many ways, but she carried within her a quiet strength, a determination, and a heart that noticed the little things that others overlooked. That heart, unknowingly, was about to catch the attention of someone whose life was worlds away from hers. Someone whose presence would soon transform everything she had worked so hard for. The next morning, she arrived at the diner, feeling the usual mix of tiredness and determination. She had barely finished her coffee when a new customer walked in. He was different from anyone she had seen before. His clothes were elegant, but not flashy, his shoes polished, and his posture calm and confident. He carried himself like someone used to being noticed, yet he seemed to prefer blending in. She didn't think much of it at first, simply greeted him with her usual warm smile, and asked what he would like to order. He gave her a soft smile in return, one that seemed to study her carefully, noticing things she didn't even realize she was showing. The way she straightened her back when she spoke, the careful way she balanced the tray, the subtle kindness in her eyes as she interacted with other customers. It was strange, almost like he could see beyond the surface of her life, but she didn't give it much thought. To her, he was just another customer. Throughout his visit, she served him efficiently, bringing his coffee just the way he liked it, refilling it without being asked, and offering a small pastry on the side. He didn't rush her, didn't complain, and his quiet presence was oddly comforting. When he left an unusually generous tip, and a small folded note that read, "You have a rare kindness that deserves to be noticed." She stared at it for a moment, confused, thinking it must be a mistake, or maybe just a polite gesture. Still, the words lingered in her mind. The next few days were a blur of ordinary work, but she found herself glancing toward the door, half expecting him to appear again. She couldn't explain why, but there was a curiosity, a small spark of excitement she hadn't felt in a long time. Life in the diner had always been predictable, but this presence, even if brief, made her world feel a little larger, a little more alive. Then, one afternoon, he returned. This time he didn't just order a meal. He stayed for a while, watching quietly as she moved between tables, helping customers and managing the small chaos of the diner with remarkable skill. He didn't interrupt, didn't draw attention to himself, but his eyes followed her, noticing the little things, the careful way she folded napkins, the soft words she used with a child who had spilled their drink, the patience she showed to a difficult customer. She still didn't recognize who he was, didn't realize the world he came from, and treated him with her usual courtesy, unaware that he was observing every detail. He left again with another note. This time longer. Your attention to detail and the way you care for others is rare. People like you don't go unnoticed, even if it seems like the world overlooks you. Keep going. She read it twice, then folded it and tucked it into her apron pocket. It felt strange to have someone pay such close attention, and she couldn't help but wonder who he was. Was he lonely? Was he someone who just enjoyed observing others? She shrugged it off, returning to the rhythm of her work. Over the next week, he appeared at irregular times, never following a predictable schedule, always quietly observing. Sometimes he was there for breakfast, other times for lunch, or just a quick cup of coffee in the evening. Each time, he left something small, a note, a tip, or a kind word. Each time, he noticed something new about her. She started to look forward to these visits, though she didn't understand why. There was a strange excitement in knowing someone was paying attention, someone who saw her not just as a waitress, but as a person who mattered. She mentioned it briefly to a coworker one day. Laughing nervously, "I think someone is watching me. I don't even know who he is, but he keeps leaving notes." Her coworker shrugged and joked. "Maybe it's a secret admirer." She smiled, but deep down she felt there was more to it than that. She couldn't shake the feeling that this person was important in ways she didn't yet understand, that he saw something in her that others hadn't bothered to notice. One afternoon, while the diner was quiet, he spoke to her for the first time. "You have a gift," he said softly, almost like a whisper, as if he didn't want anyone else to hear. "A gift for noticing the little things that most people ignore. It's rare and it matters." She blinked, unsure how to respond. She had been praised before, but never like this, and certainly not by someone who seemed so composed and observant. Her heart raced, but she kept her expression calm, nodding politely and returning to her work. Despite her professionalism, she couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was he? Why did he care? And most importantly, why did it matter so much to her that he noticed her at all? The questions swirled in her mind, sometimes distracting her from her work, sometimes giving her a sense of anticipation that made the long hours feel lighter. She felt a strange mixture of curiosity, caution, and hope. Emotions she hadn't felt in a long time. She began to pay more attention to her own actions, almost unconsciously, hoping she would live up to the attention he gave her. She adjusted how she moved, how she spoke, how she smiled. Though never in a forced way, she wanted to be herself, the person he had first noticed. It was like a quiet game, one-sided but meaningful, that added a layer of excitement to her ordinary life. The mysterious customer didn't just watch. He seemed to understand her struggles without her speaking a word. He noticed when she looked tired, when she hesitated at a difficult order, or when she brightened someone else's day with a small act of kindness. Each observation, each note, was like a recognition of her value in a world that often overlooked it. She started to feel that maybe, just maybe, someone believed in her potential, even if she didn't fully believe in it herself yet. One day, after a particularly long shift, she found a note waiting for her at the counter. It read, "You deserve more than this. You have talent, kindness, and strength. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She stared at the words, feeling a mixture of awe and disbelief. Who was this person who could see so clearly? The thought that someone in the world valued her in a way she had never experienced before was almost overwhelming. She folded the note carefully, holding it close, and felt a strange warmth she couldn't explain. She began to notice little changes in herself as well. She held her head a little higher, smiled more confidently, and started to dream a little bigger. Even mundane tasks felt lighter, as if the presence of this observer had shifted something inside her. She couldn't stop thinking about him, imagining what his life might be like, the world he lived in, and how someone so far removed from her own reality could care so much about her. Her coworkers noticed a difference too. She moved with more confidence, spoke with more assurance, and seemed more energized despite the long hours. Some asked if she had a secret, if she was seeing someone, but she only smiled mysteriously, keeping the truth to herself. The connection she felt with this mysterious customer was private, intimate in a way that didn't require names or explanations. Days turned into weeks. And each encounter, each note, each small gesture, slowly built a bridge between their two worlds. She didn't know his name, didn't know his story, didn't know the life he led outside the diner, but she felt a growing trust in his intentions. She started to believe that life could hold surprises, that sometimes recognition and kindness could come from the most unexpected places. Then one afternoon, something shifted. He left a note that was different from the others. It wasn't just praise or encouragement. It contained a hint of curiosity about her life outside the diner. "You have dreams, don't you?" it read. "I'd like to know more if you're willing to share." She felt her heart skip a beat. Someone had not only noticed her work, but wanted to know her story, her hopes, and her struggles. The idea was thrilling and terrifying at the same time. She spent the rest of her shift thinking about what to say, what to reveal, and how much to share. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly seen, not just as a waitress, but as a person with depth, potential, and dreams that deserved attention. She realized that this mysterious observer had already begun to change something inside her, making her believe that she mattered in ways she hadn't allowed herself to believe before. By the time she left the diner that evening, she carried more than just her tired body home. She carried a sense of hope, anticipation, and curiosity. The world outside still seemed vast and uncertain, but she felt a quiet excitement about the possibilities that might lie ahead. She had no idea who this man was, what his intentions were, or how far his influence could reach, but she knew that something extraordinary had begun, a connection that could change her life in ways she had never imagined. That night, she lay in bed, turning the note over in her hands. Reading it again and again, his words echoed in her mind, making her dream of possibilities she had once considered impossible. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew her life had already begun to shift. Someone out there, someone powerful and aware, had seen her not just for what she did, but for who she was. And that simple act of noticing was the first step toward a life she had only dared to imagine. The next morning, she arrived at the diner feeling the usual mix of fatigue and determination. But there was something different in the air. She could sense it before even stepping inside, though she didn't know why. As she wiped her hands and prepared for the breakfast rush, she noticed him sitting in his usual corner, calm and composed, eyes quietly following her movements. But today, he wasn't just observing. He seemed ready to speak, to bridge the distance that had existed between them until now. When she approached his table to take his order, he looked up and smiled in a way that made her heart skip. "Good morning," he said gently. "I've been hoping to talk to you." She froze for a second, her mind racing. She had imagined this moment countless times, but never like this: real, direct, and unexpectedly personal. She nodded, keeping her professional composure, and took his order. Yet something in the way he looked at her made it impossible to treat him like just another customer after he finished eating. He motioned for her to come closer. Hesitant but curious, she leaned slightly toward him, keeping her hands folded in front of her. He spoke with a calm confidence that made her feel both nervous and intrigued. "I've been watching you for some time," he began. "Not in a way that intrudes, but because I see the way you treat people, the way you care about the small details that most overlook. That kind of kindness and attention is rare, and it matters." She blinked, unsure what to say. She had been praised before, but never like this, never, by someone who seemed so deliberate, so sincere, and yet so powerful in presence. He didn't ask for anything in return. He wasn't looking for flattery or attention. He simply wanted her to understand that her qualities were noticed, that her work, her patience, and her heart were valuable. She felt a strange mix of emotions, gratitude, confusion, curiosity, and even a hint of disbelief. Someone like him taking an interest in her life seemed almost unreal. She wanted to ask questions to know who he was, but she hesitated, unsure how much to reveal about herself. Over the next few days, their interactions became more deliberate. He would arrive at the diner not just to eat, but to speak with her, to ask about her day, her dreams, and the challenges she faced. At first, she was cautious, unsure of his intentions, but his sincerity was undeniable. Each conversation left her thinking, reflecting, and slowly opening up to someone she had never met before. He asked about her family, her hopes, even her little ambitions that she rarely shared with anyone. And she, for the first time in a long while, found herself speaking freely, telling someone about her life in a way that felt safe and validating. One afternoon, after the lunch rush had calmed, he asked if she wanted to step outside for a moment. Nervous, she agreed. They walked along the quiet street outside the diner, the city bustling around them but feeling distant, almost invisible. He listened as she spoke about her struggles, how hard it was to make ends meet. The dreams she had deferred, and the fear that life would always feel like a cycle of work without reward. She expected him to offer platitudes, but instead, he simply nodded, acknowledging her words, showing that he understood without judgment. "You have more potential than you realize," he said quietly. "Most people never get the chance to see themselves clearly because the world doesn't stop to notice. But I see you. I see your work, your patience, your integrity, and I want to help you explore what you can truly do." His words struck her in a way that few had before. She had longed for encouragement, for recognition that went beyond casual compliments, and here it was, coming from someone whose attention carried weight she could barely comprehend. She struggled to believe him at first. Could someone like him genuinely care about someone like her? It seemed almost too good to be true. Yet there was something in his calm, deliberate presence that made it impossible to dismiss him. He wasn't flattery or empty praise. He was offering guidance, attention, and an opportunity to be seen for who she was. And slowly, a small seed of trust began to grow. He began introducing her to ideas and experiences she had never considered. They spoke about possibilities beyond the diner, about skills she had that could open doors she didn't even know existed. He asked about her interests, her hidden talents, the things she was too busy or too cautious to pursue. At first, she hesitated, unsure whether she deserved this attention or whether she had the courage to step outside her familiar world. But his gentle encouragement nudged her to consider things she had only dreamed about in private. Sometimes he gave her small exercises, simple ways to explore her potential, a suggestion to write down her dreams, to track her skills, to practice talking about her goals. It was subtle yet powerful. He wasn't handing her success. He was helping her see the possibilities and take the first steps herself. Each day, she noticed herself gaining confidence, learning to trust her instincts, and daring to hope that she could achieve more than survival. The more they interacted, the more she realized how rare this connection was. She had lived most of her life unnoticed, quietly putting in effort, rarely acknowledged beyond polite smiles and small thanks. But he treated her as an individual with value, intelligence, and untapped potential. That recognition, that validation, was transforming her perspective. She began to walk taller, speak with more assurance, and even find joy in tasks that had once felt exhausting or monotonous. Her coworkers noticed a change in her too. She carried herself differently, her eyes brighter, her energy more focused. She smiled more readily, laughed more easily, and even handled difficult customers with a newfound calm. Though she didn't reveal the truth, they sensed that something extraordinary was happening, that she had been touched by a force beyond the ordinary rhythm of diner life. There were moments of doubt, of course. She questioned whether this was real or if she was imagining it, whether she was ready for such attention, and whether she truly deserved the belief he showed in her. But each encounter, each conversation, each thoughtful gesture reinforced that this was not fantasy. This man, whoever he was offering her not just recognition, but the beginning of a path toward something bigger. One evening, after a long day, he handed her a small envelope. Inside was a note and a card with an invitation, an event where she could meet people who could support her ambitions, learn new skills, and see a world she had never imagined. Her hands shook as she read it. Fear and excitement collided inside her. Could she step into this world? Could she take this chance, even though it was so far beyond her comfort zone? The idea was daunting, but the thought of continuing as she had, unnoticed and limited, suddenly felt unbearable. She spent hours thinking about the invitation, weighing her fears against the promise of possibility. The diner, her routine, and her ordinary life had been safe, predictable, and comforting, but they had also limited her. She realized that stepping forward, accepting this unknown opportunity, might be the first time she truly embraced her potential. And slowly, with growing courage, she decided she would go. The days leading up to the event were filled with preparation, nerves, and anticipation. She cleaned, organized, and even bought a simple outfit she felt confident in, knowing she would be seen by people from a world far beyond her own. The billionaire continued to guide her, offering advice, reassurance, small lessons about how to carry herself, how to speak with confidence, and how to make the most of this opportunity. She soaked it all in, realizing that this was not just about an event, it was about learning to believe in herself. When the day finally arrived, she stepped into a room full of unfamiliar faces, bright lights, and unfamiliar energy. At first, she felt overwhelmed, but then she remembered the lessons he had shared, the belief he had instilled in her, and she straightened her back, held her head high, and moved forward. She introduced herself, spoke to others with curiosity and confidence, and realized that she was capable of navigating a world she had once thought unreachable. By the end of the day, she felt a sense of accomplishment she had never known. She had spoken, listened, and shared parts of herself in a way that was authentic and confident. She could feel the shift inside her, the growing sense that life held more for her than she had dared to imagine. And she knew, without a doubt, that it was because someone had first seen her, recognized her worth, and offered her the guidance to step into her own light. That night, as she returned home, she reflected on the journey so far. The mysterious observer had become more than a distant figure. He had become a mentor, a guide, and a catalyst for change. She still didn't know everything about him, his life, or the full extent of his influence. But she understood one thing clearly. He had unlocked something inside her that had been waiting, hidden, and ready to grow. And with that realization, she allowed herself to hope, to dream, to prepare for the life that was beginning to unfold before her. The following weeks brought a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation into her life. She had returned from the event feeling more confident, more aware of her own potential, and more curious about what her life could become. Every day at the diner seemed the same on the surface, but beneath it, she felt a subtle shift. The ordinary routine now carried a sense of possibility. She moved through her tasks with renewed energy, noticing that even small gestures mattered, and that her growing confidence made each interaction a little brighter. One afternoon, as the lunch rush died down, he approached her table again. There was a new intensity in his gaze, a seriousness she hadn't seen before. She felt a flutter of anticipation, unsure what this visit would bring. He smiled, but it was a smile that carried weight, signaling that something important was about to happen. "I've been thinking about your potential," he said quietly, "and I want to give you an opportunity, something that could change your life." Her heart skipped a beat. She had imagined possibilities before, dreamed about better days. But the reality of someone offering her a real chance was almost too much to grasp. He handed her a carefully folded document. As she opened it, she realized it was more than a gesture. It was an invitation, a plan, a way forward. He explained that he wanted to invest in her skills, her dedication, and her character. It wasn't just money, although that was part of it. It was mentorship, support, and access to resources she had never imagined. She felt a mix of excitement and fear. Could she really step into this new world? Could she accept such generosity without feeling like it was too much? Her mind raced as she considered the offer. She had always been cautious, accustomed to doing everything on her own. Accepting help, especially from someone she barely knew, felt strange and risky. What if she failed? What if she wasn't ready? What if this was a mistake? But as she looked at him, she realized he believed in her. His confidence in her abilities was unwavering. He didn't just see her potential, he trusted that she could fulfill it. That trust, simple as it seemed, was more powerful than anything she had experienced before. He explained that the opportunity would involve training, mentorship, and exposure to experiences that could shape her future. It might require her to step out of her comfort zone, to learn new skills, and to meet people who could guide her along the way. He was offering her a bridge from her current life into something greater, something she had only imagined in quiet moments. As he spoke, she felt a sense of possibility growing inside her, a spark that made the everyday struggles of the diner seem smaller in comparison to what could lie ahead. Over the next few days, she considered the offer carefully. She spoke with her closest friends and family, carefully weighing their advice. Some were skeptical, worried that she might be setting herself up for disappointment. Others encouraged her, sensing the rare chance in front of her. She spent nights awake thinking about what it would mean to step into a new life, to leave the familiar behind, and to embrace a world she had only glimpsed in her imagination. Each thought was accompanied by a mix of fear, excitement, and hope. Finally, after much reflection, she decided to take the leap. She realized that continuing her ordinary life would never give her the sense of fulfillment and possibility she now felt. The chance in front of her was rare, and she couldn't ignore it. With a deep breath, she accepted his offer. Relief and excitement surged through her at the same time. She had made a choice not just to accept help, but to believe in herself, to trust that she could rise to the challenge. From that moment, her life began to shift in ways she had never anticipated. The billionaire introduced her to mentors, professionals, and opportunities that expanded her horizons. She attended workshops, learned new skills, and slowly became more comfortable navigating spaces she had once thought intimidating. Each day brought new lessons, challenges, and victories. She found herself thinking creatively, making decisions with growing confidence, and realizing that her own voice mattered. The sense of empowerment was exhilarating, yet humbling. There were moments of doubt and fear, of course. She sometimes questioned whether she could live up to the expectations, whether she truly deserved this chance, and whether she was ready for the responsibility that came with it. But each time, he reminded her that the opportunity was not a handout, but a recognition of her strength, perseverance, and potential. He encouraged her to focus on growth, learning, and effort rather than perfection. Slowly, she began to internalize this mindset, realizing that her worth was not defined by immediate success, but by the courage to try and the determination to keep moving forward. Her relationships began to change too. Friends and family saw her growing confidence and new sense of purpose. They marveled at how she carried herself differently, more assured, more engaged, and more hopeful. The diner, which had once been the center of her life, became a stepping stone rather than a boundary. She still cared deeply for her coworkers and customers, but her focus had expanded. She saw herself as capable of contributing in bigger ways, of taking risks, and of making choices that aligned with her dreams. The billionaire continued to guide her, not by giving direct instructions, but by helping her recognize her own strengths and strategies. He encouraged her to take initiative, to think critically, and to embrace opportunities with both caution and courage. She learned how to present herself professionally, how to communicate effectively, and how to navigate complex situations with confidence. These lessons were transformative, slowly reshaping her understanding of what she could achieve and how she could approach the challenges of life. One particularly pivotal moment came when he invited her to participate in a project that required her to take leadership, problem-solving, and decision-making skills to a level she had never explored before. She felt nervous at first, worried that she might falter or make mistakes. But he reassured her, reminding her that growth often comes from facing challenges head-on. She dove in, worked tirelessly, and discovered reserves of resilience, creativity, intelligence she hadn't realized she possessed. Her success, small at first, built upon itself, giving her confidence to take on even larger opportunities. She also learned the importance of patience and persistence. Not every effort yielded immediate results, and there were setbacks along the way. Yet each setback became a lesson, a chance to reflect, adjust, and try again. The Billionaire's mentorship emphasized growth over perfection, helping her understand that progress was a journey, not a single achievement. She began to embrace mistakes as learning moments rather than failures, and this shift in perspective allowed her to take risks she had previously avoided. The financial support he offered, though significant, was only one part of the transformation. More important was the belief he instilled in her, the understanding that she had value, talent, and the ability to shape her own future. For the first time, she felt fully empowered to pursue her dreams, not as distant fantasies, but as achievable goals. Every step she took reinforced the idea that her life could be more than just surviving day to day. It could be meaningful, purposeful, and expansive, as weeks turned into months. Her confidence grew, and so did her ambitions. She started to set goals for herself that had once seemed impossible, ranging from career aspirations to personal development and financial stability. Each goal was met with careful planning, dedication, and support from the network she was building with his guidance. The world, which had once felt so distant and unattainable, was becoming accessible through her own efforts combined with the mentorship she had received. By the end of this transformative period, she had begun to envision a life far beyond what she had imagined while serving coffee and plates at the diner. She understood that opportunity often comes to those who are prepared and willing to act, and that guidance, mentorship, and belief from someone who sees potential can make a life-changing difference. Her confidence, skills, and mindset had shifted profoundly, allowing her to embrace possibilities she had once only dreamed of. That night, as she reflected on everything that had happened, she realized that this journey had changed her in ways deeper than wealth or career opportunities could. She had discovered her own resilience, learned to trust herself, and understood the power of support and recognition. Her ordinary life, which had once seemed fixed and limited, had transformed into a pathway filled with choices, potential, and hope. And all of it had begun with someone noticing her not for what she did, but for who she was, and believing in her enough to offer her a chance to rise. By the time the final phase of her journey arrived, her life had already begun to shift in ways she had never imagined. The once familiar world of the diner now felt like a stepping stone rather than a boundary. She walked through the city streets with a new sense of purpose. Noticing the small details, she had always appreciated the smell of fresh bread from a bakery, the laughter of children playing, the soft glow of streetlights in the evening. These ordinary moments no longer felt ordinary. They were reminders of how far she had come and of the life she was now capable of creating. The Billionaire's mentorship continued. But now, it was more about refining her skills and helping her navigate the opportunities she had earned. He introduced her to people from industries she had never dreamed of, business leaders, educators, and innovators, interaction broadening her understanding of what was possible. She learned to communicate with confidence, to present ideas clearly, and to take on challenges with resilience. With each success, small or large, she realized that the effort she had put into her life all along had prepared her to rise to these opportunities. One day, she found herself standing in a meeting room filled with people she had admired from afar in magazines and online articles. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself of the lessons she had learned: patience, focus, and the importance of believing in her own worth. As she spoke, shared her ideas, and listened to the feedback, she realized that she could hold her own among people who had once seemed untouchable. She was not just a waitress anymore. She was a professional, confident individual whose voice and vision mattered. Her transformation was not only professional but deeply personal. She noticed subtle changes in how she carried herself, the way she walked, the way she smiled, the way she engaged with others. She had gained self-respect and a belief in her abilities that had been dormant for years. Tasks that once felt overwhelming now seemed manageable, and challenges became opportunities to grow rather than obstacles to fear. She had learned that her life was not limited by circumstances, but shaped by choices, courage, and perseverance. As her confidence grew, so did her ambition. She started planning for the future in ways she had never considered. She thought about starting her own business, continuing her education, and creating a life that provided stability and joy not just for herself, but for her family as well. The billionaire's guidance had not only shown her what was possible, but it also taught her how to take control of her own path. She learned to set goals, plan strategically, and take deliberate steps toward achieving them. Despite the dramatic changes in her life, she remained grounded. She still remembered the long hours at the diner, the fatigue, and the moments when she had felt invisible. Those experiences shaped her character, giving her empathy, patience, and a deep appreciation for hard work. She understood that success was not just about wealth or recognition, but about remaining true to oneself and using newfound opportunities to grow, help others, and make meaningful choices. Friends and family were amazed by the changes in her. They noticed how she spoke with confidence, carried herself with grace, and approached problems with clarity and determination. Some were skeptical at first, unsure how someone so different from their ordinary life could fit into this new world. But they soon realized that her growth was genuine. Her transformation inspired others around her, showing that life could change dramatically when someone recognized your potential and supported your journey. She also took time to reflect on the billionaire's role in her life. She realized that his attention and mentorship had been the catalyst, but the change was ultimately hers. She had worked, learned, and adapted to every challenge and opportunity. She had taken the chance when it was offered, embraced discomfort, and cultivated skills and confidence that allowed her to step into a new life. The experience taught her the power of being seen, the impact of encouragement, and the importance of believing in oneself even when the world seems indifferent. With this understanding, she began to pay it forward. She looked for ways to support others, to notice the small details, to offer encouragement to people who, like her, might feel unseen. She volunteered, mentored, and shared her story, showing that kindness, attention, and belief in potential could ripple outward and create meaningful change. Helping others became a source of fulfillment. Adding depth and purpose to her own journey, her financial situation had improved dramatically. But money was no longer the main measure of success. She had gained independence, stability, and the freedom to make choices that aligned with her values and dreams. She could pursue education, explore new opportunities, and invest in experiences that enriched her life. More importantly, she had developed the confidence and resilience to navigate the ups and downs of life with grace and determination. As she looked back on her life before the billionaire entered it, she felt a mixture of gratitude and awe. She'd been living an ordinary life, full of challenges and unrecognized effort, yet that life had prepared her for this moment. The skills, patience, and empathy she had developed while serving customers at the diner became the foundation for her new life. The recognition and guidance she received acted as a key, unlocking doors she had never imagined. Her daily life had transformed in visible ways. She moved through the world with purpose, took on challenges with confidence, and approached every interaction with a mix of professionalism and genuine kindness. Yet internally, she felt even more transformed. She had discovered her own strength, learned to trust her instincts, and understood that her life was not defined by circumstances but by choices, perseverance. In courage, she also realized that opportunity often comes from unexpected places. Someone had noticed her, recognized her value, and offered her a chance she might never have received otherwise. But it was her own willingness to act, to embrace the chance, and to commit to growth that made the difference. She understood that life-changing opportunities are powerful, but they require courage, preparation, and belief in oneself to truly create transformation. In her reflections, she often thought about the simple acts that had started it all: a note, a kind word, a quiet observation. those small gestures had changed everything. They reminded her that noticing someone's potential and encouraging it could have an enormous impact. It wasn't about wealth or fame. It was about recognition, belief, and the courage to give someone the chance to rise. Her life became a story of balance between ambition and humility, effort and opportunity, giving and receiving. She had learned to accept help without shame, to work hard without losing herself, and to remain true to her values while stepping confidently into a world she had once only dreamed of. The lessons she learned during this journey became guiding principles that shaped her decisions, relationships, and approach to life. She continued to grow, both personally and professionally. Each new challenge became a chance to test her skills, deepen her understanding, and expand her horizons. She learned to navigate uncertainty with resilience, to embrace discomfort as a path to growth, and to trust that she could handle whatever came next. The confidence she had built allowed her to approach life with curiosity, courage, and a sense of purpose she had never felt before. Looking back, she could hardly believe how much had changed. From a waitress who felt invisible and limited by routine, she had become someone capable of shaping her own destiny. She had gained not only opportunities and resources, but also the most important tools of all: self-belief, resilience, and the ability to see potential in herself and others. The transformation was complete, not because someone gave her a life, because she embraced the chance to create one. Her story became a source of inspiration to others. She shared her experiences, showing that ordinary people with dedication, kindness, and perseverance could achieve extraordinary change when given support and the courage to act. She became an example of what is possible when someone is noticed, encouraged, and empowered, reminding everyone that small gestures can lead to life-changing outcomes as she moved forward. She carried a sense of gratitude that shaped her actions. She remembered the diner, the long hours, the fatigue, and the moments of invisibility, knowing that those experiences had prepared her for the life she now led. She also remembered the billionaire, whose quiet observation and belief had sparked the change, and she honored that gift by living fully, growing continuously, and paying it forward to others who needed a hand. Her life was no longer ordinary. It was filled with opportunities, growth, and purpose. She could look at the future with hope and excitement, knowing that her efforts, combined with the support and belief she received, had created a foundation strong enough to carry her anywhere she chose to go. She had transformed not overnight, but through a journey of patience, courage, learning, and self-discovery. Finally, she understood the most important truth of all: life could change in ways she had never imagined. Not because someone gave her a life, but because someone noticed her potential and she had the courage to embrace it. That realization, simple, profound, and life-changing, became the guiding light for everything she did. She had gone from being unseen to being empowered, from surviving to thriving,